Why was she the only one who hadn't spoken at the briefing table? The others filled the room with noise, maps shuffling, boots scraping the concrete floor, short bursts of forced confidence echoing through the hollow chamber. But she sat still, eyes lowered, her silence louder than all of them. They didn't notice, or maybe they pretended not to. It didn't matter. She had learned long ago that being overlooked was a kind of power, if you carried it right. The fluorescent lights above hummed faintly. Dust floated in the stale air. The voice of the commander rolled on, crisp but tired: coordinates, targets, movement patterns, all the usual language of men preparing for something ugly. She let it wash over her, words drifting in and out, but her focus was elsewhere, on the faint tremor in her hand as she pressed her thumb against the table's edge. She hid it quickly, sliding the hand under the sleeve of her fatigues. No one saw. When the meeting broke, boots scattered in different directions. Some joked as they left, others whispered nervously. She lingered, pretending to review notes. She didn't need to. Every detail had already imprinted itself into her mind. The target compound, the perimeter sweep, the low probability of civilian presence. They always said that, didn't they? Low probability. Like lives were just numbers on a probability sheet. She rose slowly, feeling the weight of her rifle case against her shoulder as if it pressed not just on muscle, but on memory. Outside, night had settled in, thick, starless, the kind of dark that swallowed even sound. She moved across the yard, the gravel crunching underfoot, every step steady, measured. No one stopped her. Few ever did. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. Her barracks was quiet. Inside, the hum of a small heater filled the silence. She closed the door, exhaled, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her boots remained laced, her posture stiff. Only her eyes softened as they caught the faint photograph tucked into her pack. A young girl, hair tied back, a mischievous smile frozen in time. Her sister, younger by 5 years. That photo had traveled with her through every deployment, folded so many times the edges were worn white. She stared at it, thumb brushing over the crease. The others thought she volunteered for the assignment out of ambition, a hunger to prove herself in a unit that rarely welcomed women in such roles. Let them think it. The truth was harder, quieter. Somewhere in the target zone, somewhere inside that haze of names, maps, and coordinates, was a man responsible for her sister's disappearance. She had traced the threads herself, off record, in stolen hours of research. She had followed whispers, coded reports, fragments of intelligence no one else cared to connect. Tonight's mission was supposed to be clean, but for her, it wasn't clean at all. The knock on her door jolted her back. "We're moving out in 10, a young voice, nervous. She answered only with a sharp nod, unseen through the wood. The convoy rolled before midnight. Engines low, lights masked, each vehicle cutting through the black like shadows on wheels. She sat near the rear, rifle across her knees, helmet strapped loose under her chin. The men around her were loud at first, trying to mask fear with banter. Slowly, the noise dwindled, replaced by the rhythm of tires on broken road. She listened, not to them, but to the silence between. Silence carried truth. One of them, a boy no older than 20, leaned closer. His breath smelled faintly of coffee gone stale. "You really never talk much, do you?" he asked with an awkward smile. She didn't answer. He laughed nervously, shaking his head. "Guess that's your thing." He turned away, embarrassed, not knowing that her silence wasn't shyness, it was armor. Hours stretched. The desert outside seemed endless, a barren ocean of sand and shadow. She remembered her father's voice from years ago, telling her that silence was dignity, that words were cheap in places where bullets spoke louder. He had worn a uniform too, long before she had, and like her, he carried things he never shared. When the convoy stopped, the air was sharp with dust. The squad leader gave a curt wave signaling dismount. She moved with them, silent, blending in, though in truth she was already half detached, a shadow within shadows. Her boots pressed into the dirt, crunch muted by the sound of shifting gear and whispered commands. Ahead lay the compound. Low walls, crumbled stone, a hollow carcass of a building long abandoned by normal life. She raised her scope slowly, eyes narrowing. Through the glass, shadows flickered, men with rifles, packing, smoking, waiting. Her pulse steadied. Her breathing slowed. This was the rhythm she knew best, the stillness before action. The leader crouched beside her, whispering, "You take the east post. We'll move in from the south." His tone was clipped, assuming compliance. She didn't nod. She just moved. Through rubble she crawled, dust bit at her throat. Every scrape of stone against her uniform sounded louder than thunder in her ears, though she knew the others wouldn't hear it. The east post came into view, two men, rifles slung, distracted by a low conversation. She adjusted her scope, finger brushing the trigger guard, breath shallow. But she paused, not out of fear, out of memory. She saw her sister's face again, sharp and clear, the way she used to look at her with trust so unshakable it hurt now to recall. She blinked hard, shook it off, and in that breath one of the guards turned, gaze drifting toward the dark. For a split second she thought he saw her. Heart jolted, but he only spat into the dirt and turned back. Her rifle steadied again. 2 shots, silent, precise. They crumpled before either could make a sound. She dragged them quickly into the shadow of the wall, her movements efficient, practiced. For a moment she lingered, hand resting briefly on one man's shoulder, almost like a prayer. He had been someone once too, maybe even a brother. The mission pressed forward. The squad breached from the south. Muffled shouts, the rattle of suppressed fire. A door kicked in. She moved around the perimeter, eyes scanning windows, angles, shadows. Every flicker of movement tested her nerves, every echo stretched her senses thin. And then she saw him. Through a cracked window, just a glimpse, a face she knew only from grainy photographs, sketches from informants, half-believed intelligence reports. The man tied to her sister's disappearance. Her chest tightened, breath snagging in her throat. It was him. She was certain. But she couldn't take the shot. Not yet. The angle was wrong. Civilians could be inside, and the order hadn't come. Her finger trembled on the trigger, not from hesitation, but from restraint. She bit down hard on her lip until the metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. The noise of the firefight rose, shouts, breaking wood, ricochet of bullets. She moved closer, heart pounding, mind splitting between duty and vengeance. Then, suddenly, silence. Not the peace of silence, but the heavy, suffocating kind that follows violence. The squad regrouped inside. She slipped through the breached door, rifle up, scanning. Smoke hung in the air, bodies on the floor. The smell of burned powder clawed at her lungs. Her eyes darted across faces. None were him. The leader barked clear. The word echoed like a lie. Because she knew he was still here, somewhere in the dark corners, watching, waiting. And her silence, her patience, would be tested in ways none of them could imagine. She felt it first, not with her eyes but in the strange tightening of the air. A presence, heavy, unseen. The others relaxed too quickly, their rifles lowered, their breath returning like men who thought the worst had passed. But she knew better. The silence wasn't safety. It was bait. Her boots pressed carefully against the cracked floor as she moved deeper into the compound. The room smelled of old wood and oil, a bitter mix that clung to her nostrils. Somewhere above, a faint creak echoed, too soft to be the wind, too deliberate to be chance. Her squad leader, face flushed, barked into the radio, "Building clear, repeat building," she cut him off, her voice finally breaking the silence. Not clear. The 2 words, sharp and flat, froze the air. Heads turned, some frowned, others smirked. It wasn't common for her to speak, and when she did, they rarely listened. But tonight, something in her tone made even the loudest fall quiet. The boy from the convoy whispered, "You hear something." His voice cracked like dry wood. She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her rifle, gaze locked on the staircase at the far end of the corridor. A shadow had flickered there just for a breath, then gone. Her finger brushed the trigger, but she didn't fire. Timing mattered more than instinct. The squad leader sighed, frustration in his shoulders. "All right, you and Jensen sweep upstairs, rest, hold position." He tossed the order like a bone. She didn't argue. Orders were orders, but inside her pulse hammered. Upstairs, yes, that's where he would be. She could feel it. Jensen moved ahead, steps heavy, too loud for her liking. She followed in silence, every step placed with care, weight distributed to muffle sound. The stairs groaned under their boots, the kind of sound that echoed into memory, the kind that would never be forgotten. Halfway up, Jensen whispered, "You really think someone's here?" His voice trembled despite the forced bravado. She glanced at him briefly, eyes sharp, then back to the shadows above. He swallowed, nodding as if her silence itself was confirmation. At the landing, the hallway stretched narrow, doors lined on either side like watching eyes. Darkness pooled in corners, thick and patient. She raised her scope, slow and steady, scanning. A draft whispered through a broken window. The curtains fluttered like ghosts. Then movement, a sliver of it. The faintest shift of a doorknob, left side, third door. She signaled Jensen with a small gesture, hand flat, palm open, halt. He froze. Sweat glistened on his temple, catching the faint light. She stepped forward, each breath deliberate. Her hand pressed lightly against the wall, feeling the vibration of something subtle on the other side. A shuffle, a shift of weight, someone waiting. Jensen raised 3 fingers, counting down silently. 3, 2, 1, he kicked the door. The room erupted, a flash, the crack of suppressed gunfire. Jensen dropped, clutching his side, a strangled cry escaping his throat. She didn't flinch. Her rifle barked once, twice, 3 times. Shadows collapsed against the floor. She dropped beside Jensen, hand pressing against the blood seeping fast between his fingers. His eyes were wide, panic rising. Don't let me die here," he gasped, voice breaking. For a moment he wasn't a soldier. He was just a boy, terrified of the dark. Her silence softened. She leaned closer, pressing harder on the wound. "You won't," she said, voice low, steady. The first words she'd given him all night. He blinked, lips trembling, clinging to her voice like a lifeline. From the radio, static hissed. Voices shouted, asking for status. She ignored it. Her eyes scanned the room. 3 bodies sprawled on the floor, but not the one she sought. Not him. She could feel it in her bones. He was near, but not yet cornered. Jensen groaned, his strength fatting. She pressed a clotting bandage from her kit against the wound, hands quick, precise. "Stay awake," she whispered. His breath hitched, shallow. His hand caught hers briefly, desperate, human. She didn't pull away. The squad leader's voice thundered through the radio again. "Report, damn it!" She clicked the comm once, a sharp burst of static. No words, but enough. They would understand she was busy. Outside, gunfire erupted again. The squad was engaging fresh movement near the southern wall. Reinforcements. Her stomach sank. If reinforcements were arriving, then the man she sought wasn't just passing through. He commanded this place. This was his nest. And she was already inside. Jensen's grip loosened. His eyes rolled briefly, then steadied. She adjusted his position, tucking him against the wall where stray bullets wouldn't find him easily. She left him with the softest touch of reassurance on his shoulder, something she had never done before, something she hadn't planned to. Then she rose, rifle ready, and stepped back into the hall. The compound groaned under distant fire. Dust fell from the ceiling with each rumble. Her boots whispered across the floorboards as she advanced, senses stretched thin as wire. At the end of the hall, a single door stood slightly ajar. Light leaked faintly through the crack. Her heart jolted. She didn't need confirmation, she knew. The radio crackled again. The squad leader, fall back now." His voice was frantic, strained. But she didn't turn. Orders blurred against the weight of what she carried inside. She pushed the door open. The room was bare except for a single chair near the far wall. And in it, him, the man from the photographs, older than she'd imagined. Lines carved deep into his face, beard streaked with gray. But the eyes were exactly as she remembered from the reports. Cold, calculating, empty of remorse. He didn't move when she entered. He only stared, lips curving into a faint, almost mocking smile. "I wondered when they would send you," he said, his accent thick, voice gravelly. His calmness unsettled the air. Her rifle rose steady, but her breath wavered. Every muscle in her body screamed to pull the trigger, yet something rooted her still. "You've been looking for me," he said softly as if he already knew. "Not them, you." Her chest tightened. His words felt like knives. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "It wasn't me who took her, not with my hands, but I gave the order. I remember her face, frightened, small, just like yours once was." Her throat closed. Heat surged behind her eyes. The rifle trembled in her grip. She forced it still, but her vision blurred with the weight of everything she'd carried here. "You want justice," he whispered, leaning back, voice low and taunting. "Or vengeance?" The question coiled inside her like venom. Her silence stretched. Her finger brushed the trigger. But her father's words returned. Dignity doesn't always speak. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it acts differently than expected. Behind her, footsteps thundered. The squad stormed the hall, shouting, weapons raised. The leader shoved past, barking, target in sight. The room filled with noise, commands, the clatter of rifles. Her silence vanished into the chaos. They dragged the man from the chair, shackles clamping hard against his wrists. He didn't resist. His smile lingered, mocking, haunting. He looked back at her once, eyes piercing, as if he knew her choice had already been made and undone. Her rifle lowered, her chest heaved. She wanted to scream, to cry, to pull the trigger even now, consequences be damned, but she didn't. Her silence returned, heavy, suffocating, but somehow regal. As they hauled him away, Jensen's weak groan from the hall reached her ears. She turned, moving quickly, kneeling beside him again. His eyes fluttered open, relief washing faint across his pale face when he saw her. You came back," he whispered. She pressed her hand against his wound again, firm but careful. Her silence held him like a promise, and for the first time he seemed to understand that her quiet wasn't absence, it was strength. Outside, dawn cracked faint against the horizon, bleeding soft light into a world that had known only shadows. She looked once toward the convoy where the prisoner was being shoved inside, then down at Jensen, clinging to life. Two battles raged within her, the mission they had come for and the mission she had carried alone, and both demanded a price she wasn't sure she could pay. Why did his smile stay with her more than the gunfire? Even as the convoy rolled back across the desert, engines groaning, dust spiraling in the pale light of dawn, she saw it. That mocking curve of lips, the glint in his eyes. Shackled in the back of the lead truck, he should have been defeated. But no, he looked like a man who had already won. She sat opposite Jensen, who was propped against the side, pale but breathing. His wound was stabilized, though pain twisted his face with every bump in the road. He tried to joke, tried to laugh weakly between gasps, but the sound was hollow. His eyes flicked to her often, like he was searching for something, maybe reassurance, maybe answers. She gave neither, only her silence. The squad was restless. Some celebrated the capture. Others muttered doubts, eyes narrowing at the prisoner. A man like him never traveled alone. If they had him, others would come. Retaliation wasn't a question. It was a countdown. The leader sat rigid near the front, jaw tight. He barked at the radio every few minutes, demanding updates, confirming checkpoints. His voice grew sharper each time the static answered back, as if he too felt the noose tightening. But she heard something else in that static, something no one else noticed. A faint rhythm, a signal. She leaned closer, tuning her ear. Morse, short bursts, precise. Someone was tracking them, bleeding through their channel, mocking their attempts at silence. Her stomach sank. They were not alone on the road. The boy from the convoy, the one who had asked about her silence, noticed her expression. "What is it?" he whispered, leaning too close. She didn't answer. Instead, she tapped her fingers against her knee, mimicking the rhythm she'd just heard. His eyes widened. He wasn't trained to read it, but he understood enough. They were being hunted. The prisoner's gaze flicked toward her, as if he too had heard. His smile grew wider, faint but deliberate, as though confirming her fears. She wanted to shoot him right there, to erase that smile, silence his taunts, but her rifle lay across her knees, heavy with the weight of restraint. Her squad wouldn't understand. They never would. The convoy jolted as the lead truck slowed suddenly. Dust billowed, shouts erupted. The radio crackled with urgent voices. Roadblock. Improvised but effective, wreckage sprawled across the path, steel and concrete piled in a deliberate snare. The leader cursed under his breath, ordering the vehicles to halt. Soldiers jumped down, scanning the horizon, rifles raised. The desert stretched empty, silent, too silent. Her throat tightened. This was it. The trap had already closed. A shot cracked from the ridge. One soldier dropped instantly, body limp against the sand. Chaos erupted. Shouts. Suppressed fire toward the rocks. Engines roaring. The convoy fractured into noise and panic. She pulled Jensen down, covering him as bullets hissed overhead. Dust exploded around them, stinging her skin, clogging her lungs. She glanced toward the prisoner, still shackled, still seated. His eyes met hers, calm, almost amused. He didn't need to run. His people were already here. Her squad leader screamed into the radio, demanding air support, backup, anything. Static answered. More signals bled through, taunts, mocking rhythms, Morse tapping out phrases only she caught. "You will not leave." She knows why. Her blood ran cold. They weren't just after the prisoner. They were after her. The boy from the convoy crawled toward her, panic in his face. "What do we do? What do we?" A shot ripped through his shoulder, cutting his words into a scream. He collapsed beside Jensen, clutching the wound, his breath ragged. Her silence cracked. She barked low and sharp, "Stay down, breathe, press hard." Both boys stared at her wide-eyed, as though her voice alone could shield them. She didn't speak again. She couldn't afford to. The squad leader scrambled back, sweat streaking through the dust on his face. "We can't hold this. We need to move." His eyes darted toward her, desperate, accusing. "Ideas." For once they listened. The irony bit hard. The woman they had ignored at every briefing. The shadow they dismissed as decoration. Now in the chaos, all eyes fell on her silence, waiting for it to break. She scanned quickly the wreckage ahead, the ridge above, the prisoner still shackled. Her mind mapped every angle, every shadow. She inhaled, slow, deliberate. Then she pointed, not at the roadblock, not at the ridge, but at the dry riverbed cutting through the desert flank. Shallow, narrow, half hidden by dunes. It wasn't perfect, but it was a path. The leader followed her gaze, hesitated, then cursed. "Fine, move, cover fire." The squad erupted, guns blazing, covering each other as they dragged the wounded and shoved the prisoner forward. The desert roared with fire and dust. She took the rear, her rifle snapping precise bursts, each shot clean, measured, buying seconds they desperately needed. The riverbed swallowed them quickly, offering thin walls of earth against the storm. But the enemy pressed, shadows darting along the ridge, voices shouting in a tongue that carried hunger and fury. Bullets still rained, but less accurate now, distance blurring their aim. They stumbled deeper into the cut, hearts hammering, breaths ragged. The prisoner stumbled too, shackles dragging, yet his smirk never faltered. He leaned once toward her as they shoved him along. His whisper sliced through the noise. "Every step you take brings you closer to her truth." Her chest clenched. Rage flared hot. She shoved him harder, silence wrapping her like armor, though inside it cracked and splintered. When they finally collapsed in the shadow of a broken culvert, the squad gasped for air. Blood seeped into sand. 3 wounded. 1 dead. Morale shattered. The leader's voice shook as he tried to rally them, but his eyes betrayed doubt. She crouched apart, rifle resting against her knee, scanning the horizon. The sun climbed higher, light, harsh, unforgiving. Sweat stung her eyes. Her breath steadied. Around her, exhaustion and fear gnawed at the men. Jensen coughed weakly. The boy from the convoy groaned, whispering something about home, about his mother. The leader cursed softly, pressing his forehead against the dirt as though praying. And through it all, the prisoner. shackled, bruised, yet still commanding the space with his silence, his smirk, his presence. He looked at her as though no one else existed. She turned away, staring into the dunes, heart heavy. Her father's words echoed again. Dignity doesn't always speak. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it carries the weight no one else can bear. She closed her eyes. The silence around her deepened, stretching taut, heavy with choices unspoken. They weren't safe yet, and she knew the worst was still coming. Because silence was never the end. It was the warning before the storm. How long could silence hold before it broke into madness? The desert night pressed down heavy, colder than the men expected, the kind of cold that crawled into bone and stayed there. The squad huddled in the shadow of the culvert, breaths misting faintly under the starless sky. Every sound felt sharper in the dark, the scrape of a boot, the wheeze of a wounded chest, the faint metallic rattle of shackles whenever the prisoner shifted. They had stopped speaking hours ago. Words only fed fear. Only she seemed comfortable in the silence, though even her silence wasn't peace, it was armor. And armor grows heavy when worn too long. She sat slightly apart, rifle resting across her lap, eyes scanning the black horizon. Nothing moved. No stars. No wind. Just the endless emptiness of the desert. But she didn't trust emptiness. Emptiness was only cover. Behind her, Jensen groaned softly, shifting his bandaged side. She glanced back, watching his pale face tighten with each breath. He caught her eyes, tried to smile weakly. "Still here," he whispered. His voice was thin, brittle, but alive. She gave the faintest nod, then turned back. That was all he needed. The boy from the convoy, arm in a sling now, sat close to Jensen, murmuring nonsense stories about home, about fields, about the taste of bread hot from an oven. Maybe he was saying it for Jensen's sake, maybe for his own. Either way, his voice cracked often, caught between trying to be brave and trying not to cry. The leader paced in the dirt, muttering curses into the dead radio. His frustration echoed like a hammer against steel. He kicked at the sand, finally slamming the useless device against the culvert wall. Sparks fizzed, then died. No signal. No backup. They were alone. And then from the shadows, his voice, the prisoner. "You think silence keeps them away?" His tone was calm, mocking, carried easily across the cold air. "It doesn't. They already know where you are. Every second you sit, they close in." The leader snapped, "Shut up." His voice cracked with exhaustion, but it lacked power. The prisoner only smiled, shackles clinking softly as he shifted against the stone. His eyes found her, locking with a weight that made the air thick. "You know," he said softly, almost like a secret meant only for her. "You know they won't stop until I'm free. You've studied me. You've searched. Why?" Her throat tightened. She didn't answer. Not here, not in front of the others, but her silence was louder than words, and he seemed to understand. His smile deepened. The leader turned sharply, glaring at her. "Why's he staring at you?" His voice dripped suspicion, sharp as a blade. Some of the men glanced too, uneasy. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her silence held firm. The prisoner chuckled low. "Because she knows. She knows the story you don't. She carries it in her silence." The words struck like bullets, but she didn't flinch. Inside, though, fire burned. She wanted to lunge across the sand, silence him with steel, end the game. But her finger only pressed tighter against the stock of her rifle. "Not yet. Not here." Jensen's voice broke the moment. Weak but steady, he whispered, "Stop listening to him." His eyes met hers, pleading, "Don't let him in." She lowered her gaze briefly, the faintest shadow of acknowledgement, then looked back into the horizon. Hours stretched. The cold deepened. The wounded shifted restlessly, their pain filling the silence with sharp breaths and muffled groans. The leader finally slumped against the dirt, exhaustion breaking his anger into muttering. She didn't move. Her body stiffened against fatigue, her mind sharpened against the dark. Somewhere out there, shadows crawled closer. She could feel it. The desert carried whispers, and those whispers pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. Her fingers brushed the photograph in her pocket, the one of her sister. She hadn't meant to, but the habit was stronger than will. She pulled it out slowly, careful to keep it hidden from the others. The edges were soft from wear, the crease worn pale. Her eyes lingered on that young smile, so alive, so far from this wasteland of stone and sand. "Does she haunt you?" The prisoner's voice sliced the night again. Her grip tightened on the photo. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on her. "I remember her, the way she looked at me when they brought her, fragile, brave in the way children are when they don't understand fear. She asked for you." His voice softened, cutting deeper. "She asked if her sister would come." Her chest clenched. Heat blurred her vision. She rose suddenly, rifle raised, finger trembling against the trigger. Gasps echoed from the squad. The leader jumped up. "Stand down." His shout cracked the night. "You shoot him and we lose everything." The prisoner didn't flinch. He only leaned back, smirk widening. "Go ahead. They'll come either way, but if you kill me now, you'll never know if she lived." The words froze her. Her breath caught, her finger hovered. The silence stretched, strangled. Finally she lowered the rifle. Slowly, painfully. Her chest rose and fell in harsh breaths. The squad watched her with unease, whispers buzzing between them. Trust fractured further in the dark. She turned away, stepping into the edge of the culvert, back to the prisoner, rifle clutched so hard her knuckles ached. Her mind screamed. Her silence felt heavier than ever. The boy from the convoy's voice broke it softly. "Ma'am, you okay?" His tone was hesitant, fragile. She didn't answer, couldn't. The prisoner's chuckle echoed like a knife dragged across stone. "Silence, always silence, but silence doesn't free you. It only chains you tighter." The night pressed on. Hours bled into dawn. Exhaustion pulled at every soul. Some slept fitful, others simply stared at the dirt, eyes hollow. Only she remained upright, unmoving, eyes fixed on the horizon, every muscle locked. And when the first pale light crept over the dunes, she saw it. A glint, a shimmer, metal against sunlight. They were here. Her silence ended in one sharp word: contact. The squad jolted awake, rifles raised, hearts pounded. The horizon rippled with figures, shadows moving across the dunes. Dozens, maybe more, too many. The prisoner's smile stretched. "I told you." Her jaw tightened, breath steadying. Her silence was gone now, replaced by something colder, something resolute. If this was where they would fall, then she would make it count. For her sister, for Jensen, for the silence that had carried her this far. The first rays of dawn did not bring hope. They brought the enemy. The horizon bled with motion, dark figures cresting dunes, shadows bending into men with rifles, trucks rolling slowly across the sand like predators circling prey. The air filled with the low hum of engines, the metallic clatter of weapons carried at the ready. Her breath slowed, steadier, calmer than the moment deserved, but calm was all she had left. "Positions," the leader barked, dragging the squad from fatigue into panic. Men scrambled, rifles raised, hearts pounding in the cold morning light. The boy from the convoy clutched his weapon too tight, knuckles white, eyes too wide for a fight like this. Jensen tried to sit up despite his wound, pain racking his frame, but he forced himself against the wall, jaw clenched. The culvert gave them some cover. Not much. Sandbags hastily stacked, broken crates in desperation. It would have to be enough. The prisoner shifted, chains rattling softly. His eyes gleamed with something more than survival, it was hunger. "They're coming for me, not you. Hand me over and maybe they let you live." The leader snarled back, "Shut your mouth." His voice cracked, but he gripped his rifle like a drowning man to driftwood. Her silence answered louder than words. She crouched low, sighting down her scope, breath already aligning with her heartbeat. One squeeze at the right second, and the first shadow on the ridge dropped soundlessly, sand swallowing his fall. The fight began. Gunfire ripped the dawn apart, echoing off the desert walls. The culvert roared with thunder, rifles barking, men shouting, the sharp scream of bullets slicing too close. Dust exploded in clouds where rounds chewed through dirt and stone. She moved like a machine, every shot precise, every breath measured. One target after another fell beneath her scope, bodies tumbling into the sand. But for every one she dropped, three more seemed to rise, pouring down the dunes in relentless waves. The boy from the convoy fired wildly, his shots tearing sand but rarely finding flesh. His fear was too loud, too shaky. A figure lunged closer, blade flashing. She swung, shot clean, the attacker crumpling feet away from the boy. He looked at her, shock wide in his face, mouth opening to thank her. But she was already back on her scope, silence still her only shield. Jensen groaned as he fired from his seated position, blood soaking deeper into his bandages. Each trigger pull cost him pain, but his jaw stayed tight, his eyes locked forward. She caught his gaze once. He gave her the smallest nod, still fighting, still with her. The leader roared commands no one could fully hear over the gunfire, his voice drowned in chaos. He was firing too, magazine after magazine, desperation tearing through him with every round spent. And then the enemy's first volley hit, mortars. The desert erupted in fire. Sand exploded into the air, raining grit and stone. The culvert shook with impact, dust choking lungs, screams tearing through the haze. She threw herself flat, grit biting into her face, arms shielding her rifle. The blast wave left her ears ringing, the world muffled, distant. But through the ringing she heard Jensen cry out, a sharp, gutting sound. She crawled toward him through the smoke, dragging herself over shattered stone until she reached his side. Blood more than before. His wound torn wider, crimson soaking his fatigues. His face was pale, lips trembling as he tried to stay conscious. She pressed her hand against the bleeding, forcing pressure, her silence cracked by her breath, ragged, fast, almost breaking. His hand weakly found hers, grip faint but there. His voice was a whisper swallowed by the chaos. Don't stop. Her throat tightened. She pressed harder, forcing her breath steady, but the enemy fire didn't pause. More shadows surged closer, bullets sparking against stone inches from her head. The leader shouted, "We can't hold this." His panic cut sharp, desperate. He looked at the prisoner, looked at her, and then, maybe he's right, maybe we give him up. The words stunned the squad. Even through gunfire, silence fell like a blade. The prisoner's smile widened, chains rattling as he leaned forward. "Yes, hand me over, you save yourselves." Her head snapped toward the leader, eyes blazing. Silent fury burned through her gaze. The leader froze, his words faltering under her silence. But the enemy didn't wait. They surged closer, rounds biting deeper, figures cresting the culvert's edge. She shoved Jensen's hand aside, lifted her rifle, and fired point-blank into the first face that appeared. The man fell back in a spray of sand, but another followed, then another. The culvert became a cage. Bullets screamed, sand rained, bodies clashed in the dirt. The boy from the convoy screamed as he drove his bayonet into a charging figure, eyes wild, breath tearing. The leader fought tooth and nail, rifle empty, swinging it like a club. She moved through it all like a shadow, silent, precise. Blade flashing, rifle cracking, every motion a dance between life and death. Her silence was no longer armor, it was fury honed sharp. And yet the enemy pressed, too many, too relentless. Another mortar hit. The culvert shuddered, stone cracking overhead. Dust fell in choking clouds, the world a storm of fire and grit. Through the haze she saw him, the prisoner, still chained but somehow calm, untouched by the chaos. His eyes locked on hers, steady, unblinking. "You can't save them all," he called over the fire. "But you can save yourself. Break your silence, say the word, give me back." Her jaw clenched, teeth grinding. Around her, men screamed, bled, fell. Jensen's groans cut sharper into her chest than the gunfire did. The boy from the convoy stumbled, rifle slipping from his grip. An enemy lunged, blade raised. She fired without thought, dropping the attacker, but the boy collapsed anyway, clutching his chest, blood spilling between his fingers. His wide eyes found hers, lips trembling. "Mom!" His voice cracked, childlike, and then he stilled. Her chest tore open in silence. No scream, no word, only silence, louder than all the gunfire around her. The leader fell next. A round caught him clean through the throat, his shout cut short into a wet gasp. He staggered, blood spraying, eyes wide with disbelief before he crumpled into the sand. One by one the squad dwindled. One by one silence claimed them. And still she fought. Alone now. Rifle nearly empty, blade slick, breath ragged. Her body ached, blood streaked her uniform, but her eyes burned cold, steady. Through the smoke the prisoner's voice rose again, stronger, sharper. "This is your silence killing them. Break it, speak. Give me back, or watch them all die in your arms." Her rifle clicked empty. She stood in the smoke, chest heaving, surrounded by bodies and blood. Only Jensen still breath, barely, weak gasps pulling his chest shallow. She fell to her knees beside him, hands trembling against his wound. His eyes fluttered open, pain drowning them. He tried to form words, lips moving faintly. She leaned close, desperate to catch them. "Do," his breath rattled. "Don't break, not for him." Her throat clenched. Tears stung her eyes, burning against the smoke. The prisoner's laugh cut the air, low and cruel. "Then watch him die." And as the last of Jensen's breath rattled in her hands, her silence shattered inside her. Not with words, not with screams, but with a vow so deep it burned her bones. She rose slowly, eyes locked on the prisoner, rifle hanging empty at her side, blade still sharp in her grip. Around her the world was ash and ruin. Around her silence weighed heavier than ever. The dawn had come, but it brought no light, only fire, only death, only silence screaming louder than war. The smoke hadn't cleared. It hung low and heavy, curling through the culvert like a ghost that refused to leave. The battlefield was still, except for the occasional groan of twisted metal and the soft hiss of sand shifting back into place. The bodies of her squad lay scattered, half covered in dust, faces turned skyward as if waiting for answers that would never come. She crouched low, one knee pressed into the broken earth, her blade sticky in her hand, her rifle emptied and useless beside her. Her breath came in shallow bursts, each inhale scratching against the grit in her throat. Her silence was no longer strength. It was a weight crushing her lungs. She stared at Jensen's body. His chest had stilled, the last of his breath now part of the desert air. His hand, the one that had clutched hers with such desperate insistence, now lay limp, fingers half curled as if still holding onto courage. She had promised herself she would keep him alive. She had failed. But the prisoner was still breathing. His chains glinted in the fractured morning light, his form almost regal in the wreckage, as though he had orchestrated the destruction himself. His lips curled faintly, not quite a smile, but close. "You fought well, but what did it bring you? Silence and corpses." She didn't answer, couldn't. Her silence had been her shield for years, but now it was being used against her, twisted into a weapon she couldn't stop. Her eyes darted up, scanning the horizon. The enemy had pulled back, not gone, just waiting, watching. A pack of wolves circling prey too weak to stand. The attack hadn't been meant to wipe them out in one wave. It had been meant to break them piece by piece, to leave her stranded with the choice they wanted her to make. The prisoner leaned forward, his voice soft, almost coaxing. "They're not finished. You know that. They'll come again, but slower, hungrier. They'll wait until you're too tired to fight back, and then you'll have nothing left but your silence, and me." She gripped her blade tighter, her knuckles whitening, but her eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. Movement flickered, shadows on ridges, figures slipping between dunes. She knew he was right. They hadn't left. They were tightening the noose. Her chest burned with the memory of the boy's final word. "Mom." It haunted her more than the gunfire, more than the blood. He hadn't seen her as a soldier in that last moment. He'd seen her as something human, something protective. And she had failed him too. The desert wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest trace of voices, enemy shouts, distant, deliberate. They were calling to each other, coordinating, waiting for her to break. The prisoner's eyes followed hers, calm, almost patient. They want me. I'm the prize. Hand me over and they have no reason to kill you. You know this. Her silence was her only answer, but her hands trembled. She wiped Jensen's blood from her fingers onto her uniform, the crimson smearing into already dark stains. You think silence makes you stronger, the prisoner said, his tone sharpening, but look around you. They're gone, every one of them. You swallowed your words, held them back, and it cost their lives. How much longer before it costs yours? She turned to him then, eyes sharp, cutting through the haze. He faltered for just a second beneath her stare, because there was no surrender in it, only defiance. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was defiance itself. But defiance couldn't load her rifle, couldn't heal the dead, couldn't stop the next wave. She crouched lower, crawling across the wreckage toward the scattered supplies. Her fingers found a single half-empty magazine, a few grenades, a torn pack of rations. Not enough. Never enough. She tucked them into her vest with mechanical precision, forcing her hands steady even as her heart trembled. The prisoner tilted his head, chains rattling softly. You'll die for pride, that's what this is. Pride disguised as silence. A gunshot cracked in the distance. She froze. The sound echoed across the dunes, too far to hit, too close to ignore. It was a reminder. They were watching her, hurting her, testing how long she would hold out before she cracked. Her chest tightened, breath catching in her throat. Memories surfaced, unwanted, unstoppable. A hospital bed, a folded flag, the look on her father's face when she had walked away from the funeral without speaking a word. The vow she had made to herself, never again. Never let words betray what silence could protect. The prisoner's voice cut through the memory. Who did you lose? A brother, a father, a child? Silence doesn't bring them back. Her jaw clenched, teeth grinding. The wind shifted again, and with it the sound of engines, distant, faint, but growing. Reinforcements, or another wave. She moved quickly, low to the ground, crawling to where the leader's body lay. His weapon was bent, useless, but his radio damaged, half buried in sand, still hissed faint static. She ripped it free, pressing the cracked speaker to her ear. Nothing but white noise. She twisted the dial, her hands slick with blood, trying to pull a signal from the void. Broken, the prisoner said, almost gently, like the rest of them. She ignored him, adjusting tapping until faintly she heard it, a voice, distant, distorted, but real. Outpost, repeat, survivors. Her breath caught. She pressed the button, but no words came. She hesitated, silence choking her again. To speak would mean breaking everything she had built. To stay silent would mean staying alone. The prisoner watched, eyes narrowing. Say it, call them, save yourself, unless your silence matters more than your life. Her finger hovered on the button. She felt her throat tighten, the weight of years pressing against her chest. She wanted to scream, to cry, to finally let her silence collapse, but she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she pressed the button once. A short burst of static. A signal, not a word, a trace of life, enough to let someone know she was still there. The voice on the other end crackled back, stronger this time. Copy, hold position, we're coming. Relief washed through her chest, but it was fleeting. The engines in the distance grew louder, the enemy closer. Reinforcements might come, but would they be soon enough? The prisoner leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. So you'll hold out, wait for salvation. Interesting choice. Her grip tightened on her blade. Her silence wasn't waiting, it was war. The dunes erupted again. Figures emerged, closer this time, rifles raised, shadows running low across the sand. Bullets snapped against stone, chips flying. She ducked, rolled, returned fire with sharp precision. 2 fell, but 5 advanced. Grenade pin pulled, she hurled it over the ridge. The blast shook the sand, screams carried away by the wind. Smoke rolled, but the shadows didn't stop. She moved fast, blade flashing, cutting through the first who dropped into the culvert. His blood splattered hot across her arm, soaking into already stained fabric. The next lunged, rifle swinging, she ducked, twisted, drove steel into his side. He fell choking, eyes wide with surprise. Her breath tore, her body ached, but her silence roared louder. She fought like the silence itself was a storm unleashed, every motion fueled not by words, but by everything she had buried. The prisoner watched her with something strange in his gaze now. Not triumph, not mockery, almost respect. But the enemy kept coming. She stumbled back toward the wall, rifle empty again, blade slipping in her grip. The prisoner leaned forward, chains scraping stone. They won't stop, you know that. And your silence can't kill them all. So what then? What will you sacrifice? Them or yourself? Her chest heaved, her silence like fire burning in her lungs. She looked at the horizon, engines closer, hope fragile, enemy pressing. She knew she couldn't hold much longer. And in that moment her silence became something else entirely. Not just defiance, not just shield. It became choice, a vow deeper than words could hold. She dropped to her knees in the dust, hands trembling, breath breaking, the prisoner's eyes locked on hers. She had something left to give, but it would cost more than blood. The sky had turned white. Not from sun, but from smoke. The horizon bled into a haze that blurred sand, stone, and sky into a single choking curtain. She crouched low, one knee digging into the grit, her lungs burning with every inhale. Her fingers tightened around the blade slick in her grip, her rifle long since useless, her ammo spent. Shadows moved through the smoke, slipping, darting, advancing. She could hear them more than see them, boots grinding into sand, foreign voices barking orders, the metallic clatter of rifles being reloaded. They were closing in, step by step, like a tide rolling forward no matter how many waves she cut down. She pressed her back to the culvert wall, closing her eyes just for a second. The silence inside her was deafening, not the silence of calm, not even of defiance, but the silence of someone standing at the very edge. Her hand brushed Jensen's dog tags where they lay cold against her chest. They felt heavier now than the blade in her hand. He was gone. The boy was gone. The leader was gone. She carried all of them in her silence, and it was breaking her apart. The prisoner shifted, his chains rattling. His voice came low, measured, almost like a sermon. "This is it, the last stand. Do you still believe silence can save you?" She didn't turn, she didn't answer. But the past answered for her. A different battlefield, years ago. Smoke then too, but mixed with snow. A convoy destroyed in the mountain pass. Her brother's voice over the comms, sharp, steady, until it was. Until the explosion cut it short, until static replaced his words, until the world collapsed into a single, hollow silence. She hadn't screamed then either. Not at the wreckage. Not at the funeral. Not at the folded flag placed in trembling hands. She had swallowed the scream, buried it deep, and built a fortress of silence around it. A fortress she carried into every mission. A fortress she thought made her stronger. But now that silence was bleeding. The engines in the distance roared closer, a faint tremor through the sand. Reinforcements, maybe, or maybe another wave of death, she couldn't be sure. The prisoner leaned forward, eyes catching the dim light filtering through the smoke. Who was it? Who broke you first? Father, brother, child. You've carried this silence so long it's rotting you from the inside. Her jaw clenched. She refused him her eyes. A bullet snapped past her cheek, sparks flying from the stone. The enemy was only meters away now. Her grip on the blade tightened. She forced her breathing into rhythm again, steadier, sharper. If they wanted her silence, they'd get it, but not the way they thought. She launched herself from cover, moving low through the smoke, blade flashing. The first soldier appeared in her path, his rifle lifted too slow. She drove steel through his chest, twisting, yanking free before his scream was even swallowed by the haze. The second swung his buttstock. She ducked, cut across his legs, then finished with a thrust beneath his ribs. Gunfire roared in answer. She dropped, rolled, pressed against the sand as bullets shredded the air above her. Dust filled her throat, her chest screaming for breath. She crawled fast, slipping behind a broken slab of stone, her silence once again her only ally. The prisoner's voice followed her through the smoke. "You can't kill them all, you know this, but you can end it with me. Hand me over, speak one word, save yourself." His words weren't taunts anymore. They were temptation, they were release. And for the first time she felt herself crack. Just a hairline fracture, but deep enough. Her throat ached, the word pressing against it like a knife begging to be unsheathed. Just one word, just once, and maybe she could live. Her hand trembled against the blade. Jensen's voice echoed in her skull, faint, broken. "Don't break, not for him." Her silence held, barely. Another wave came. She met it head-on, steel meeting steel, her body moving on instinct now, every strike faster, more desperate. She was a shadow in the haze, carving space, buying seconds. Blood splattered her face, mixed with the sweat dripping from her brow. Her breath tore, ragged, but still she fought. But numbers were numbers, they kept coming. Her arms ached, her knees buckled, her vision blurred from the smoke and exhaustion. She stumbled back, tripping against rubble, dropping to one knee. Her blade slipped in her grip, slick with too much blood, hers and theirs. The prisoner's voice was closer now, his tone soft, almost pitying. "This is how silence ends, not with dignity, but with collapse." Her chest heaved. She pressed her palm against the sand, forcing herself upright, forcing her legs to hold. She wouldn't collapse, not yet. The engines roared louder, close now. Hope flared, just faint, just fragile, but hope all the same. And then the prisoner said something that froze her blood. "They're not yours." She turned sharply, eyes locking on his. He tilted his head, a faint smirk curving his lips. "Those engines, those voices, they're not your reinforcements, they're mine." Her stomach dropped. The sound of engines grew clearer, heavier, sharper, different from the old radios she knew. She listened harder and her silence cracked inside her. He was right. They weren't hers. A wave of vehicles crested the ridge through the smoke, armored, armed, enemy flags whipping in the wind. The sand shook with their weight, the air filled with the guttural roar of their approach. Her knees buckled again, but this time it wasn't from exhaustion. It was from realization. There would be no rescue, only more wolves. The prisoner leaned back against the wall, his chains rattling softly as if in applause. "Now do you see? Your silence carried you here, and here is where it ends. Unless you make the choice you've been avoiding." Her chest rose and fell in sharp, shallow breaths. Her hand clutched Jensen's tag so hard the edges cut into her skin. The weight of the dead pressed down on her. The sound of the living pressed closer. She closed her eyes. In the darkness behind them she saw her brother's face, the boy's face, Jensen's face, all of them waiting for her answer. Her silence had always been her shield, but now it was her prison. The engines thundered louder. The enemy shouted, closer, closer still. Her hand trembled against the blade. Her throat burned with the weight of a word that begged to be spoken. One word could save her. One word could doom her. The prisoner's voice cut through the roar, sharp and commanding. "Say it." Her eyes snapped open. Smoke swirled, sand shook, blood stained her hands. And for the first time, her silence wavered. The desert trembled beneath her boots. Engines roared like thunder, dust spiraled into choking clouds, and the horizon split with steel and banners. The enemy had come not in shadows but in daylight, their strength undeniable, their victory almost certain. She stood at the center of it all, bloodied blade in her hand, lungs searing with smoke, silence pressed against her throat like an unbroken chain. The prisoner rose slowly, his chains dragging across the stone as he leaned into the moment. His eyes burned with triumph even though his body was shackled. "This is it. This is where you break. Speak and live. stay silent and die forgotten. For the first time, she almost believed him. Her silence was not armor anymore. It was weight. It pressed her chest flat, forced her heart into a cage. She thought of Jensen, his voice steady until it cracked in fire. She thought of the boy, his innocence ripped away by war. She thought of her brother, his last words swallowed in static. She thought of all the screams she had buried inside herself. The sandstorm of war closed in. Gunfire barked from the armored vehicles as they crested the ridge. The air sang with ricochets. She ducked low, dragged the prisoner with her, chains scraping against the ground. Every instinct screamed that it was over. No amount of silence, no amount of steel could change the tide now. And then something broke inside her. Not a scream, not a word, but a memory so sharp it cut through everything. Her brother's last call: if you fall silent, if you vanish, then we all vanish with you. Don't give them that. Her eyes snapped open. The haze, the fire, the blood, they all sharpened into one truth. Silence had been her shield, but silence had also been her prison. She rose to her feet. Bullets shredded the sand at her side. She didn't flinch. She didn't crouch. She let the silence break, not with words but with something deeper, a sound she hadn't made in years. A cry. Raw, wordless. A human sound ripped from a place deeper than words. A cry that carried grief, fury, defiance, and love all at once. It cut through the battlefield sharper than any blade. The prisoner froze. For the first time his smirk faltered. His voice stuttered as he spat, "No, no, you." But it was too late. The cry wasn't weakness, it wasn't surrender, it was release, and release was power. Her body moved with new fire. The blade flashed in arcs of silver as she cut through the nearest soldiers before they could even lift their rifles. Blood sprayed across the dust, but she didn't stop. Her silence was no longer a cage, it was fuel. Every strike was a vow, every drop of blood an offering to those she had lost. The vehicles advanced, but so did she. She vaulted onto the hood of the first, slashing through the windshield, yanking the driver from his seat. She swung herself inside, ripping the rifle from his passenger, firing it into the next vehicle's tires. Explosions rocked the ridge. Fire consumed steel. The battlefield became chaos, her chaos. The prisoner shouted something, but his voice was drowned beneath the roar of fire. He pulled at his chains, desperate, furious. His power had been his words, his ability to twist silence into a blade against her. But now she had broken it. And she didn't need words to win. She carved her way back to him, dragging him by his chains, forcing him into the dirt as the remaining enemy faltered. Some fought, some fled, but all saw what she had become, a storm wrapped in flesh, silence sharpened into something stronger than fear. When the last gunfire faded, when the engine sputtered into silence, when smoke replaced fire, she stood tall over the wreckage. Her body trembled, blood streaked her arms, her blade was bent, her lungs raw, but she was standing. The prisoner knelt in the dirt, his smirk gone, his voice stripped bare. You broke it, but you're not free. You'll carry them all forever." Her eyes steady, locked on his. She didn't answer. Not because she was bound to silence, but because she had chosen it. Her silence was no longer the absence of voice, it was the presence of strength. A silence that honored the fallen, not one that hid from their memory. She turned, lifting Jensen's tags in her hand. They caught the sun through the haze, glinting like a star. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, with bodies, with the cost of war, but also with proof. Proof that her silence had not been surrender, it had been survival. And survival had led to victory. She left the prisoner kneeling in the dirt. Whether he lived or died no longer mattered. His chains, his words, they had no power over her anymore. The horizon stretched wide before her, endless, broken, but alive. For the first time in years, her chest felt light enough to breathe. The cry still echoed faintly in her ears like an aftershock, like a ghost, but it wasn't haunting her. It was carrying her forward. Her silence had changed. It was no longer a burden, it was a vow. A vow that the strongest voices were not always heard. Some were carried in silence, in scars, in the unspoken weight of sacrifice. And that silence, once chosen, could be louder than any scream. Her silence was never weakness. It was survival. It was memory. It was love. And in the end, it became her greatest weapon. Some stories are not told in words, but in silence that outlives the battlefield. And in her silence, the world will always hear them.